Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 29 of Stepping Wild. Tibs took his time eating. He'd been surprised Furman hadn't addressed him as soon as he'd moved to gather wood for the fire, and because of that he'd built his camp here. Then he'd gone hunting and returned with 2 large rabbits. While they turned on the spit, he looked over the remnant of his leather pants. There was so little left under the knee that going in with his calf bare would provide just as much protection. But while he didn't care for the reminder, his Omega runs had been done in little more. Actually, there's no but. This is and. And while he didn't care for the reminder, his Omega runs had been done in little more than a thick cloth shirt for protection. He so missed Stowe's self-repairing armor. If he'd had his leather kit, he would have done something with what was left to give him a semblance to have. Even a semblance of protection, but Graydon hadn't been kind enough to leave the dead man's things behind. He could have taken inspiration from those villagers a caravan he traveled with had stopped at years ago. They'd made their armors out of the reed that were abundant along the river, woven into pads, then attached to make the front and back of to make the back and front of the armor. The chief, who had greeted them, had been clad in a whole set of them, with the men and women closest to him having lesser versions. The guards at the gate had nothing more than crisscross lines over their arms and legs, made of what had to have been the remnant from making the better versions. Without being able to do even that, he cut the tatters off and straightened the line above the knee. He would have to go back to worrying about not getting hit instead of counting on the added protection and ability to heal himself Satisfied with the work, he turned to the cooking meat. I don't know if you're paying attention. He cut a surface layer, but if you want to talk, I'm okay with to listen. It was fully cooked. So he cut more onto a large leaf. I'm not sure that there's anything to talk about. Furman sounded calm. He spoke in a similarly neutral tone. You wanted to apologize last night. That was fear speaking. You threatened to burn me down. I was scared you still might. And because I didn't, you aren't afraid of me anymore? He sat against a tree and ate. You still terrify me and Mirka. I don't understand what you are or why you are here. You say you want to work within the rules, but the moment things won't go your way, there's nothing I can do to protect myself. I did the run within the rules we agreed to. I only channeled fire once Mirka got you to block my exit. And what happens when one of my creatures is about to kill you? It's clear from those who wandered in before that people don't want to die. I killed you, they snapped, now sounding scared, and you came back. I hadn't planned on that. He paused to meet his lip. And I can't do it again. Or maybe he could. Without the immunity to wood essence, he'd definitely feel the fear as he head towards death, and that should give him an audience. But would he get Wood's boon a second time? Did that mean that if he got another audience with the element outside the dungeon, he would gain the immunity from it? Was it worth risking? Tibs? He swallowed the meat he'd been chewing. Sorry, got lost thinking. But if one of your creature can kill me, then I die. If your first floor can kill me, I definitely don't deserve to walk out of it. But you left before because I didn't have the focus to continue, he said in exasperation, then calmed himself. Furman had never dealt with a runner before, and certainly no one like him. I was too tired to trust myself. People can't think clearly when they're tired. That's part of what your tests force us to deal with. But as part of that, we need to be able to realize when it affects us too much. Not just because it can get us killed, but in my case, also because my ability to resist using my essence diminishes. I could forget the rules and use it to survive. And you don't want that. Furman sounded dubious. Not by breaking the rules we agreed to. I don't know what Mirka told you about runners. I don't even know how much of it is how things are done instead of what the guild decided we should be doing. So this might be a case of us working with different rules. If we are, now's the time for us to figure that out and decide how we want to continue. He had another piece, and when Furman said nothing, by the time he was done, he continued with his thought. While your job is to test me and mine is to survive, that includes knowing when I've had enough. Okay, there's not a while here. Your job is to test me, and mine is to survive. That includes knowing when I've had enough. Too many runners died when the guild first threw us into the dungeon because we were never told the rules. We had to discover them by doing something without knowing we were allowed, like walking out of a dungeon without reaching the boss room and not being punished for it. So you left to protect me. Tip chuckled. No, I left because I was tired and I knew I'd end up breaking rules if I forced myself to continue. It does protect you, but that's not why I did it. I no longer trusted myself at that point. And you will return? Yes. Mirka will get their chance at killing me. Mirka isn't so... He chuckled again. It's okay, Furman. I learned a long time ago I can't control how people feel about me. All I can do is make sure it doesn't make me act in a way that isn't me. Then I'll let Mirka know you'll be back. They sounded better. Not today. I always rest between runs. The guild wouldn't let us go in more than once a week. I'll make today a rest. I'll take today to rest, and I'll do the run tomorrow as soon as you open your doors. My entrance is always open, they said, puzzled. After I've eaten, then. We will be planning, then. He killed and skinned small animals, cooking and setting meat to dry. He didn't expect the run to be long, since he'd do it well rested, but he wanted to be prepared. The skins would explain however long he remained in the forest. He might make stretchers for tanning the hides when he added to his camp, then use that to repair his armor, or remake what couldn't be repaired from the cache. That would be plural, caches. From the caches, his leather working wasn't great, but he'd had to learn once he'd outgrown his self-repairing armor. Then, when the sky darkened, he made a bed of soft earth and a cover from the leaves and fell asleep quickly. He woke to the sound of rain and the wonder of being dry. Being wet didn't bother him, but unless he willed it to stay that way, rain would get him wet. Instead of the gray morning sky, branches spread above him, interwoven tightly enough to be a roof over his camp. His hand behind his head, he admired the work. This wasn't the pulling and pushing of strands in place to get the shape he wanted. The essence flowed out of the trunks and branches the way all the others did. They had been grown well beyond what was normal, but clearly grown that way. He couldn't tell the difference between them and all the other trees within his sense. I didn't know you could make them grow. It was Mirka's idea. So you couldn't claim you'd slept badly. So you slept badly and walk out again. With a laugh, he stood, ignited the fire, and checked the drying rack. He cooked what was still moist and fed what was still moist. Fed and hydrated, he put his armor on. He grabbed his sword and shield, then entered the dungeon. Tibs studied the tiled hallway. The layout was the same as far as he could tell, so was the puzzle within it. He tested the closest tile that hadn't been triggered the previous time, and they supported his weight. It could be the trap. Let him think the triggers were the same, and overconfidence would kill him. He'd have to take his time, but with what he knew, he'd get through it faster. He made it past the center, carefully testing the safe tiles before putting his entire weight on one. Before Mirka commented, "I wish you'd changed where they are." "That isn't what test is about," Furman replied, "and it wouldn't do what you want. He isn't trusting what he knows. See how he's testing every trigger? He'd probably he's probably ready for them to move." "This is about having the patience to test all the rows, isn't it?" Tibs tested the next tile, and remembering the safe ones from run to the next. "Is it a good test?" Tibs set his foot on the safe tile before looking over his shoulder, looking over the distance he'd traveled and what he'd had left to go. "I think it's a little much for a team who's never done a run before. If they are like I was, this would just overwhelm them. I mean, a lot of fighters would just run across it and die, but they wouldn't learn from it." He placed a toe on an active trigger and pressed until the thunk sounded, then moved off it. He timed how long it took for the walls of spears to form. About half the size would you at about half the size, this would still get a lot of them, especially the second time when they thought they remembered the way and got it wrong. But it wouldn't seem impossible to do. They'd curse you. That would be plural. Well, not plural. They'd curse you, and more fighters would just. Not sure why I changed tense here. Would just run, thinking they can still be faster, but the rest would take the time to do this properly and learn. "You don't have high opinions of fighters," Furman said. Tibs tested the next safe tile. He wasn't trusting that what Furman had told Mirka. "I do once they survive, but I don't make anyone who isn't fit for the other classes get thrown in with those who should be fighters. The guild doesn't care if they should be runners or not. They throw them in and they die. 3 more rows and he'd be done." He looked at the hallway over again. You could make it even simpler, and people who wandered in might survive. They'd learn and get stronger and leave, Mirka said, displeased. But they might return to get stronger, he almost said. If they added loot drops, it would ensure survivors came back. And then return to the village with stories which would bring more people looking for wealth and strength. What happened when the next caravan arrived at the village? Heard the stories, saw the evidence in the villagers being wealthier. How long until they carried those stories to a city and for the guild to hear them? Send adventurers to investigate. What happened when they confirmed there was a dungeon in the forest? How many other dungeons like Furman would then fall under the guild control? He couldn't see the guild not scouring the kingdoms for more, and it would be his fault for teaching Furman how to draw more people to him. He'd be responsible for all the children the guild would send to their death to make the dungeons grow until people were willing to pay for the privilege of being eaten by one. "You're right," he finally said. "You wouldn't get enough out of that." He stepped over the threshold and, on alert, headed for the next room. This time, the attack came at the third intersection, just after Tibs passed it. The woodling formed quickly and attacked. He defended himself, thinking that he'd never look behind him as an Omega runner. It had always been about pressing forward. This would kill a number of them. He went on the offensive, aiming to cut its head off for a quick end to the fight, but it hurried back, shield up to protect it. They exchanged blows, and Tibs made more attempts to cut its head off to confirm that leaving its sword arm unprotected wasn't accidental. The next time it raised its shield to protect its head, Tibs cut the sword end off, grabbing the sword before it landed on the floor, and without its weapon, the fight was soon over. He studied the wooden weapon while moss grew over the woodling. The edge was sharp, and the essence made him think the metal only enhanced that, instead of being responsible. It was woven through with air, which accounted for its lightness, and water, but he couldn't work out what but he couldn't work out what that offered. What that offered. The main thing it had going for it was that it was longer than his current one, slightly longer than the one he was used to. He dropped the sword Furman made him. He dropped the sword Furman made him. You can't keep that, Mirka protested. You aren't having your creatures drop loot. I figure anything I'll take before you absorb is fair. Loot is for caches, Mirka said. Then drop coins, Tib said, heading for the room. Coins? Mirka asked. Didn't Mirka tell you about them? Don't talk like you know what I have to tell Furman, they snapped. So you were supposed to tell them. Mirka grumbled something he didn't make out. What are quains, Tibs? And I've been going through my loot list for something for the creature to drop, but everything is too costly for that. Are they simple to make? Coins are what kingdoms use for trade. He pulled a copper one, raising it to show the dungeon. They're just metal, since copper is the lowest value, so drop one each time we killed something on this first floor. On the second, he started adding silver, which is a more valuable version of the copper coin. Placed it on the floor and stepped away. Didn't anyone who walked in have one? No, and Mirka didn't know about coins. So they let out an exasperated cry that made Tibs smile. So this is going to make people want to come in, the dungeon mused, and Tibs cursed himself for bringing it up. If a villager walked out with even one coin, it would be the start of runs, and only a question of time until the guild learned about Furman. Unfortunately, it was too late to undo this, so he had to hope the villagers would be too scared of the forest to ever venture far enough to encounter the dungeon. And that concludes chapter 29 of Stepping Wild. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is available on Royal Road for free. If you want to read ahead of that and support me in the process, that is on Ream Story, where about a dozen chapters ahead. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. Links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.